Let's talk about bottlenecks. First, there is a flow of people who have problems. They go through these processes, right? I'm just going to have a very simple two-process business. And then by the end of it, they are happy. They get the thing they pay for. How can we produce more value and capture value and grow the business? The thing that's stopping us is a bottleneck. And no one's ever explained what a bottleneck is to you before. And it's where you have more demand than capacity. Now, a bottleneck in this example, I'm just going to give you just raw, numbers. Let's just say that right here, this is a, let's just look at this as a sales department, and then this is the onboarding department or project or fulfillment onboarding, on bonding, boarding, whatever. So you have your sales, we have your onboarding, and let's just say that there's just one guy in each one, and this is just their workload. They have 8 hours a day. So I'm just going to do a little out of 8 hours. And at this current snapshot of the business, let's just say that the sales guy is dealing with 8 calls of people per day. Okay, he's dealing with 8 calls a day. He's dealing with all 8. Each call takes 1 hour, so be aware of what the cycle time is. One per hour, and he has a good 30% conversion rate, which means he gets, I'm just going to round up to 3 people, right? Whatever percent that is, he gets 3 people, and this person that's onboarding and fulfilling, he could take on. Let's say it takes him 1 hour to fulfill. He could handle all of these clients, no problem. Now, let's say it took him 2 hours to handle each person, or maybe it took him let's just say it took him 1 day to handle each person. Right now, he has a capacity of 1 a day that he can onboard and fulfill. This is a problem that I had. This number became 100, and we were at 8 calls a day, and we couldn't close them all. And then once we started closing all of them by putting in more salespeople, suddenly the problem went from this zone to this zone. And this is what it looks like. In your calendar, you just have you have a card, you have appointments, you have an appointment, whatever, or you might have tasks, and you just start to kind of block everything. And the people who booked these appointments, by the time, after a few days, they're just like, I completely forgot why I booked a call, or they're just like, hey, okay, I'm waiting patiently for it to be done. But by the time they get on their next call, this onboarding person is like, hey, you know what, I have a little bit of a problem, I'm a little bit backed up. And the customer's like, I don't care. I am over here and I want to get over here, and you can't help me. I just paid you. And so as an operator, this stops the business from growing. And what people do, what leaders do, or what leadership teams do, is they silo everything off. This is like just the American way. The salesperson here is saying, hey, I'm good. I'm in my lane. I'm just going to keep closing as many as I can. And then this guy here is not just having a terrible time, he's at risk of having his boss be like, you're about to get fired because you're not doing your job. Whose fault is it? It's not, it's the system that's doing this. But individually, all these people are working in their own individualist sort of view. This is the American way, right? The sales guy's perfect, but the onboarding guy's like, hey, you know what? It takes me a day to do them. I get 3 a day. But teams don't look at it like that. They're like, hey, you know what? I'm behind. I have all these things to do. I don't even have the time to think about where, I used to not be busy. It used to just take me a day to do it. We used to just have 1 a day, but now we have 3 a day, and now we have this backup thing. It's the job of the operator to go in and note and be aware of these and say, oh, actually, this guy's, he can't, if you let this sort of pile up, it's just going to get worse and worse. And then we're not just going to have angry clients, we're going to have massive refunds. And we're going to be making less profit than before. There's these inefficiencies just because there was more demand than you had capacity for. And this could also look at not just for the fulfillment side, but every single process, every system, every subsystem or sub process, whatever steps, stages that you have. This model works the exact same way, zooming into the business, into all those like microscopic zoom in, and you can see how all these things are working. And you can see like, hey, this team might just be making content, but there is a blocker in here. So what you want to do is map out all of those things. You could start high level, and then you can map it out into all of the smaller things, all the smaller stages where it makes sense. So this is just like, this is a more complicated process. The one before that was a simpler process. And all just, they're all interconnected. And what you want to do is map out what's the demand or the thing that flows into it. It's really easy to track what thing flows into it because it's the thing that flows out of it. So you're tracking the input and the output of these boxes. And they're connected, right? And you want to track the capacity as well. Capacity is just how many can you do at an A+ quality? How many can you do where the win, if the win rate's 30%, it doesn't go down to 20%, and then it starts to, if you made a chart, you track the win rate, and then it starts to go down because you're taking on too many leads. That's why I care a lot about tracking, because as soon as you're like, there is a problem that's heading, it's crossing this line here, and as soon as it crosses the line, you're like, hey, this is this control line. As soon as it goes under that, you're like, hey, there's a problem. It's still under it. We need to do something. And so the thing that we talk about in the community is not just being aware of that there's problems, but tracking these things and having the habits and the routines to basically build these things out and to figure out what's the thing across the entire company to solve it. Let me erase this. So how do you go about designing this, and how do you kind of map together a business that's complex? Well, if you're doing under 1 million or 3 million, it's pretty easy to use what I like to call the bow tie. The bow tie is the data model that runs through the entire company. I split it into what I call the 8 areas. I give it a fun little acronym called Flow Core, and I'll explain what each of these are. And think of these kind of like the areas like the wellness wheel. If you're familiar with that, you have your health, wealth, relationships. You might be a spiritual person, so you're managing that. Your emotions, your finances, your interests, your hobbies, your things like that, and you're slicing everything into one complete view. So when you're looking at it like this is just the customer journey as well. It's just it's a complete, mutually exclusive and completely exhaustive way of how customers come in and find you. And so whenever I build a system, what I have is there's these quests, right, that I model using that box. And it just kind of flows underneath these areas. Each area has its own like percent of people that come in, and once it reaches this sort of middle point, it becomes not just did they financially commit to what percent of them like dropped out, if that makes sense. So how did they find you? What's the lead? They became a lead, they opted in, right? Like these entry points. Some of them kind of like self-organize themselves into like booking a call, or they watch some stuff and then they show up or whatever. And then this is where we win them, right? They might say yes verbally. These two are kind of the same. If it's a smaller ticket thing, they might just like opt in and then start subscribing. Commitment stage is they hop on a call and then they commit financially, right? They say yes on a call and then you get their card. Then you onboard them, you retain them so they don't churn out, and then you expand, you monetize, you ascend them. And so you'll have, when you design a business or you model a business, there's at least one, you have to make this chain. There's at least one chain. There, you can't, you know, you could skip areas. Maybe you just go straight from marketing and the step where they just check out and buy, you know, that's fine. But you could add a sort of extra thing if it makes sense, where it just leads to a higher percent of them buying. If I look at it like this, there is a sort of product notation. So we're talking about math, where this is just the percent chance that they end up buying, and then we have this thing here of a sigma notation of it's additive of how much money are we collecting. So if we're talking about reoccurring payments, in order to keep delivering reoccurring impact, we need to keep giving reoccurring, in order to keep getting reoccurring revenue, we need to keep delivering reoccurring impact. So we capture value and then we deliver on the value. And if your business is first we do the work and then we get paid, you still have marketing. You still have to close them, still have to commit them. So this works for services, works for anything that you get them results and you want them to, refer you, pay you more, and continue to keep working with you in some degree. So let's look at some of these departments, and you could look at this like, hey, the how do they find us areas like the marketing department. It's just these are connected to maybe what is the next step of this chain. So this could be the content department. We have a DM process. We have an email process where we do cold email, and then we might have an ads process. And all of these are just like how they first find us. And then we might have some of these people book and go into an email list. And so I call this this might be like my email nurture quest, and this might be my content quest. This is my ads quest, and then it flows into a sort of onboarding quest. But this allows me to sort of sort my ideas. And if someone new comes along and says, hey, I have something new I want to try, they could, instead of destroying the business, instead of changing this entire unbroken chain of how the company sort of works, you could say, you know what, you have a new sales script that you want to try. Let me just make a clone of this system, this process, and give you some leads. And then did it help get people to say yes? So maybe this was closing at 15%, and then it now is closing 30%. You have version A and version B. Well, then you can just close the gap. This is just me erasing. You just say, cool, we have a record, we have this, and let the processes here finish up, and then it kind of it's done. It's done with. So inside of a tool, like a project management or CRM, you're just making a pipeline with a specific set of rules, specific set of instructions on how to run it, habits, and how to run that. And then you just have something that's better. And now suddenly the company has more throughput going through the entire system. It's just making a little bit more. Zooming in to what is a quest. So let's say the sales thing. I'm just gonna zoom into it. It's just a few more of these cells. So you might see this in Go High Level where you have a card and then it goes to the next status, and then you might have this lead here as they sort of move around. That's what it looks like when you zoom in. There might be a lot under this area. There might be a few, and then you see that, hey, there's a bunch of stuff that's piling up under here. And it's like, well, why is that? It's like, oh, it's because these deals, the salesperson is trying to close, and then these deals just sort of pile up. But what a lot of agencies or communities or what people usually talk about is, the win rates. They want to get as many leads as they can, close them, but they don't talk about how long it takes for these people as they go through this system, how long it takes. So we're tracking the conversion rate, we're tracking how many flow and go in, but they're also tracking time. Time is, there's two parts to it. You've heard of this as speed to lead or speed to value. It's like you press a button, I press A and then my character does a kick or does something. That guy's got big nostrils there. And he does a kick and he does something. It's right away. But what if I'm playing a game If I'm playing a game and then like I press a button and then he doesn't do anything, there's like lag. I'm gonna get frustrated. A delay in business is lag to the customer. They don't want to wait. Like if you go to a restaurant and you go order pizza, right? This is my pizza, and then I hope this is red. Okay, whatever. Imagine that's pepperoni, and then it takes several days. You're going to be pissed. You're going to be like, I wish I didn't even start the process here, or you're just going to leave and say, I'm not going to pay. I'm just going to leave. Whatever. That's waste. We don't want that. So we want to track how long it takes for this, and the sooner this is, if they go buy pizza and then they get it right away, they're going to say, yeah, this place met my expectations or exceeded it. I want to refer people to it. I want to get more people to, more people in here. It makes the company more money. It just all around is just better. You waste less time. The pizza that you were otherwise making that's like sitting around might rot. Like it's just, we reduce the amount of waste. So when we see that this entire fucking area, this zone has all these people, that should raise an alarm. That should be like, hey, there's a problem. If you look at it by how long these guys are waiting on average, you can figure out where the constraints are by seeing just how long it is. There's an equation called Little's Law where we look at measuring the throughput, but also the cycle time and how long it takes to cycle through. So if there's a lot of things inside, the average time per person is going to take longer. Like if I have a bunch of people in line to go get food, in line, let's see, this person has been waiting, this person's been waiting, this person's been waiting, this person's been waiting, and each person takes 1 hour or 1 minute or whatever for them to take the next step. As soon as this person comes in, this guy's going to be waiting all this time. He's going to be waiting 5 minutes. And then this guy's going to be, maybe there was a guy before him, right, who just finished. And this guy might be waiting, 5 to 4 minutes. And these guys are all waiting like 5 minutes or whatever as they wait in line. Now imagine this is a sales calendar and they're waiting weeks or days. And you're just like, well, our win rate's good enough. You're leaving money on the table. Just by moving around how things work, a team can make a lot more money. So let me give an example of how to actually structure the work in a way. So you're not just like, aware of where these problems are, or you have a good idea of where work is piling up, but how do you actually do something about it? Like, what do you actually do besides just changing things up and saying, let's just change a new script here. I'm gonna keep this flow core thing up. I think it's useful. I'll keep the pizza. I'm hungry. I might keep this pizza. Right. So let me connect this again. So we have a percent, a flow, and a time metric in pizza. So how do you actually solve this? Inside of task tools, you might have a grid of tasks. And if you're keeping everything in your head, you're always going to be a one-man show. So when you pull it out of your head and you build a system, even though it might not be as fast or as instant as just remembering it, you can't see your team's brains, at least not yet. But you'll have tasks, and tasks have a status. And so there's either, I like to use this sort of flow where this is just a simple task queue. And it's just statuses. And so what are the common statuses? Obviously there's work in progress. There's, to do or up next. So that's like a backlog. And then you could have something that says, I'm done. And the problem is, there might be a lot of tasks for people to do. So these are just like tickets as they kind of fly in. But these sitting and waiting is not the same thing as all of these being over here and being worked on all at the same time. It's like to do as an order in a restaurant, the chef is like, okay, I'm aware that some guy wants a pizza and another guy wants, a sandwich. Another guy wants me to make a steak, but I only have one oven. So there's this capacity for this one person to come in. And so what this person does is when they're finished working on whatever task here, they move it over to done, and they're done with it. And then they go, okay, now I'm gonna be working on the next thing. Let me look at the oldest thing, right? And just imagine all these things are shifting up because I just moved it. They move it over, and now I'm working on this task here. Multitasking has never made people money. It makes you less productive. And if that statement is like upsetting to you, like you're not making as much money as you think. And we have the experiments that we've ran with people who say that it works. So if you think multitasking makes money, go take and run that experiment. It's, I talk about it. So you're just working on one thing at a time. The customer experience is like, hey, I'm cooking your thing, it's done, and then it's finished. And then the next thing just gets worked on next. And so if the flow to this part, again, we're using the box, right? This is the to do, and then this is the work in progress, and this is what comes out. If the flow to this is kind of like matching the flow to this, then you have some sort of equilibrium. Like you're kind of like you're fine. So if 8 hours worth of work pops in here a day and a person can handle 8 a day, that's dangerously at capacity. So if this guy takes a day off, he's fucked, right? The whole team's going to be behind forever. A good sort of like way to look at it is like, get to like 70 to 80%. It's good enough. And then the person has a few hours to take meetings, whatever that capacity is. So this person's working. This guy is making some fun, doing some fun things. He's completing things. And then his boss tells him, hey, I need you to prioritize this. And he's like, okay. And then another guy, he's like, go prioritize this, go prioritize. I need you to go do this. I need to go do this. Whenever that happens, now this person who had 8 hours worth of work to be done now has more than 8 hours worth of work. Now he's going to always be behind and he's going to be off tilt, as opposed to like, hey, I am completely caught up. This feels good. I'm getting paid. The company's super productive. What am I going to work on next? If there is there's another problem where if this customer or this team or whatever starts to have increased demand, so now let's say it goes from 8 to 16 hours worth of tasks a day, and then you have 8 tasks, and then there is this demand, you can't magically do more than 8 hours worth of work unless if you put in overtime, right? You're just at this capacity. And so one way to look at it is to either stop or vet out some of the work. So if it's like a lead, you call them and say, hey, you know what? Do you want to buy? Is this the right time for you? So that way this closer isn't wasting their time with people who don't want to buy yet because they just want to know what the price is and they get off a call, right? They're just like curious. It's like, well, if you have the money, and then you can book a call to see if you want to buy it or not, right? That vets people out, but it vets the right people and gets rid of or you just get more people. So instead of there being one guy, maybe they add in some people, they add in 3 people, and now they can handle 2 days worth of work off of 3 days worth of capacity. Not bad. So now suddenly everything's going to get caught up, and all the people here and all the tasks waiting here will just go through the system super quickly. And you'll end up with a bunch of done stuff, which again map to the next stage. It's not up, it's they map to the next sort of quest area, right? So that's why it's super important to use these tools, because most people, I'm not going to say everyone, has a hard time remembering every single fact and number and thing, right? We're not computers. I can't tell you like, hey, here's the 17th thing I said before this word. Like I can't do that. Like I don't know. My brain doesn't work like that. I'm not a computer. I'm not a hard drive. We're really good at identifying problems as people, as humans. So map out the things in your business, even if they're at 0, because even then, like just doing that would be super fast and super easy to do, and then you're basically done. The workshop that we have starts by building out a sort of identity bottleneck identity audit to figure out like where in your business here is are there constraints. There could be, there's a bottleneck in this step, there's a bottleneck in this step, there's a bottleneck here, there's a bottleneck here, there's a bottleneck here, and in here. And then there might be some of these other areas where you might be kind of overwhelmed and busy, and you're like, well, which one of these things? I know that there's problems all over. What do I work on? Well, what's the thing that, if you fix this, you go from this guy can't handle more, you're missing out, to if you do that, it would 2x. If this guy is at 8 deals, this bit, this, let's say this is this, this part. This is maybe the sales, under commitment. This is a C, by the way. This process is producing 8, closing people, moving people through, and they should be able to double it. Well, is there anything else that is doing more than that if you fix it? Usually, if you can double something, even if it's a match, anything that's a little bit earlier would probably be a better fit, is usually the way. So if there's no bottleneck and everything's good, and then there's like a little bit of like a hiccup here, fix this before you fix some of these other things. And then when this is no longer constrained, like it's smoothed over, the increased demand is going to fuck up something here or here. And then you fix that, and then this area might be overwhelmed, or you might like fix this entire area here, which kind of smooths the business from the start to the finish. And when you do that, let's say there's all these little 2x opportunities here. Something like this is how we can 8x a business in so many weeks. Because we go and we say, okay, well, you're doing everything. You're fixing this, even though that's not a problem. Because just because you make content doesn't mean the problems are in the content. You're already sending all these deals in. And that's the thing that we see. A lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, they start and they're like, oh, we need to get as many people in the business. We need more numbers. We need to get as many people in. And then we have to obsess about the sales call, because that's just the first skills that people get. And then without modeling and understanding this, they're going to be just doing what they've always done. Let's get as many people in. But then, they don't nurture the leads. So people drop off. People just kind of, they leave. And then there's all these things, they're not talking to the leads. They're not qualifying them. They're having a call, and then the sales call, they're making money, but they don't need to improve it. They just want more. Like, this mathematically tells you what to fix. So if you want to learn more about this, we run the workshop. It's an audit. I do this with you. We map it out, and your team can kind of understand how to, all these things map together. And we use the map framework to kind of hold this sort of idea of how to not just understand how the model works, but how do we actually adjust these things and build these tools for ourselves, for the team, in a way that like it doesn't, we try and make it easy to run the business, to let the team solve problems, so they don't need to just worry about just overproducing, which creates waste and less profit, but they can actually focus on the thing in front of them, which leads to people doing better, staying longer, working harder, being more productive, right? Coming up with their own ideas and fixing them. And ultimately that reduces the amount of decision making that the founders end up doing, which ends up making them better project managers, so they can solve the bottlenecks that are stopping the business from growing. I'm gonna keep this pizza because I'm hungry. So we talked about this map framework here. And the map is basically the model. My handwriting's terrible. We have this model, we have what we adjust, and then we have stuff that we have people that pull tasks. Pulling is that sort of task list that I shared, where there's a to do, doing, done status, and cards. just to make it easy. Like, hey man, the only thing you have to worry about is completing this task, moving it here, and then work on the next task as it comes in. This is the, if I zoom all the way down, with this box, right, of this flow, if I zoom all the way down, maybe there's another set of boxes. Maybe this is qualifying call, and then this is the hop on a call, and this is a closing call. There's all these sub stages. All the tasks from all of this flow into a big task table. It's just saying, you have a task to do here, you have a task to do here, you have a task to do here. Those are exclamation marks. You have a task to do here. Let me just throw them all together. Just work on this one next, and then work on that one next, and then work on that one. Right? It's not that bad. You just pull and you just do the next task that's in front of you. That makes it easy to bring on people. And when they open up the task inside these tools, it just says, here's the task name, here's the status, is it done? And then it writes out the instructions, or there's a link to the instructions. And then there might be an area here for comments if people are working on this and need feedback. So they like open this up, they see this, they do it, they mark it off, and then it goes in, we're done. Very easy to systematize and scale at a very high level. All you have to do is do a few things to like demonstrate yourself doing the work, recording, making the instructions, which was why we made the community. But we have this pull area. Now, what else? We talked about the model, which is, all those little boxes under flow core, right? You can have multiple quests under them, which is the whole point. You have different things. If you have like one way to get clients and that's your favorite way and the best way, like you just need one. But if you're like, hey, I'll run ads, you run content, we do DMs, like, okay, cool. That's just a way for you to connect the dots, right? So this is another process under the same area. But how do you adjust and change these things? It's not just identifying what to change in the model. It's also not just doing tasks all the time. We have to work on the right things. That's where we get to Quest. The Quest framework is spicy. It's these 5 areas, and it actually maps the map into these areas. So I kind of like to split it out like this, but we have these quests organized out as this, it's the same thing. It's just like, what are the steps that people take in order? And if you have, an area where you have multiple different departments, which usually some people are like, I want to run content and run ads, even though, I'm all over the place. You're just kind of making this visual here where this is connected to this, this is connected to this, this is connected to this, and then all these things connect, right? So this would be your marketing thing, and then this would be like your marketing thing, this would be your email thing, this would be like your sales, this might be your onboarding, and so on. This will be your, so flow, right? I'm just gonna, go down. So now we have all these specific stages. I'm gonna clean this up so it looks a little bit nicer. So we have the map over the quest areas. So we just have, let's just say we have a very simple process here. What am I doing? Dude, I really need to eat some pizza. Right? It's just like, they're just connected. We have some charts here that measure, I really need to go take a break after this, damn. That measure what it's like to be in that zone. Maybe I might have a few graphs here. So this would be maybe a line chart. We're tracking things. Maybe this is tracking how many leads we get. Or maybe this might be tracking the, amount of people that pay. You could track so many things. You can track the number, you can track the conversion, you can track the time, or you can track what I like to call a contra metric. A contra metric is any combination of these. When I talk about that, I'm going to let you imagine a few examples, but it could be how many deals that you get per hour, or like what's your win rate over time, as you know, as it changes. It's just different ways to slice things up. Or you could be like, what's the win rate of this department versus this department, or a win rate per person, and you're just comparing things. Then we have the actual engine. So these are the sub stages of that process, right? You can design it however you want. This could also be a specific project. We use this concept called a fever chart to track a project over time, right? So this is what percent of the project is done, and this is what percent of the project's due date, you know, this buffer is done. And so a project, as it makes mistakes and gets delays, it'll finish. And if it can finish on time, in this example, it'll be good, right? And then we have a sort of kata card, and this is 5 areas, 5 questions that we answer and cycle through to say what's the target. You know, we're trying, you know, in this example, you know, we're trying to, you know, get below this line, and we're trying to finish this project, and you're just kind of leaving this sort of reflection thing open. It's 5 questions. Use the kata, the coaching kata. It's 5 questions that you just run through as often as you need to, usually every other day. Then, you know, some areas might not have a constraint or some problem. Maybe everything here is just fine, right? All these steps are fine. But this seems to be the thing that has a problem, so we're iterating on it. But across all of these things, we have that sort of task board area that we talked about, where you have to do, doing, done, right? Work in progress, you know, whatever. And you have all of your tasks under, you know, this person is working on too much, but maybe they're working on something, they get stalled, and then you want to work on something else, then they also get stalled, and then they work on something else. And now the average time of all these people who were told, it doesn't have to be leads, it could just be tasks. Like a manager might be like, hey, can you work on this? Or like it could be a project, and they're like, yeah, I'll finish it. A person might think, yeah, I'll finish it tomorrow. Then they look at this and they say, fuck, I can't. I have 4 other things that I all told them, you know, I have so much to do. That's when they have to stop, you know, they have to do something. There's all this sort of ways to communicate to the team. And having a board or some sort of app that communicates this tells the team like what's going on. You can slice up all the tasks, not just by, you know, what I'm doing is showing one example, but you could slice it by which person. You know, maybe you have a different person and you can see all that person's work. So you could say, you know, I want to see everything that this person here has done, right? You can also track by projects. So I can say, okay, this project here is handled by this person. I want to see what this person is doing for this quest specifically. Because you're slicing it up. It's like a pie. You're slicing up and saying, show me all of the tasks for this quest that this person is doing under this, you know, project. And it's very easy to just slice this and say, oh, it's actually just, you know, these tasks. So this is just a sort of all view that you can slice. So you can, all the tasks that you slice. And then this is all the different projects that you slice. And then this stuff over here is the model of how the entire business works. If I zoom out, if I want to zoom out, I would really just abstract this down to say, you know what, this is how we get customers. This is how we fulfill customers. Right? This is just, you know, how we capture value, then how we deliver value. And this is really just abstract, you know, it's really just these things boiled down into just 1 or 2 things. If I really want to extract it down, it's just like how much money goes in and what percent comes out, and, you know, how many people graduate from the community, right? Like like I can zoom all the way out, and then it's just me slicing into all these things. Like how many customers go into the business and what percent come out. But there is one more thing that we could talk about that's completely missing here. And I talk about it as if, I couldn't, like, what else could be missing? And it's the capacity part. It's really just looking at what the team is. And so there's this concept that, even though this is the customer journey, there's another way to look at this that you can still fit within each of these things, but you have your own separate sort of quest area or sequence of these models for the things that run the business itself. These, I give the acronym of LIFT. LIFT is your HR stuff, which I literally just say, can you run these things and get people to do these 5 things as a meeting? You run these every 90 days or as often as if there's no constraint, you just do it again, which is never the case, but you just run it every 90 days to refresh. And then you run a units or engine sort of review once a week. You could do one, then the other, or just do both. I like to do a 90-minute meeting, and this is formally known as like the L10 in EOS. And then what I do with the kata, it's like 15 minutes. And then you might do that 3 times a week or once a week, depending on who's working on this. So if there's no one that like wants to improve, there's nothing really there. And then for the tasks thing, this is something that's crucial. And this is I would say once you build this out, the thing that makes it stick is like, is the team coming together and talking and saying, hey, I'm going to be doing this today. And then it's like, okay, you're going to do it. How long until you think you're going to get done? And everyone's like, oh, I'm going to work on this. You need this to run projects. You say, you say that you're going to finish this milestone by this date, and then you just check in and you ask, how long is it going to take you? If they give an estimate of 1 day, it's going to take 2 days. It uses up 1 day of buffer. 1 day from the due date's like estimate of like all this extra time to get to the due date, which uses up a day of the buffer. So let's say there's like 5 days of buffer, 1 week. This would be a 2-week long project for a total of 3 weeks, right? 10 days of tasks. If one guy's like, hey, I need to use 1 more day, we use up 20% of the buffer, use up 1/5 of that buffer of the 5 days. So for projects and for tasks, you just have this sort of meeting just to sort of check in and say, hey guys, what do you guys have that's cooking? And right now we're playing around with like, are we gonna do this by text or just check in? Like a Scrum thing, even though some people hate that, it is productive and it keeps things on track. And then you're like, wait, you said that this would take a day and it's been 3 days. What's the problem? Like we're inching up towards we're not going to finish on time. We used up the buffer. And usually people, there's all sorts of reasons. That's why we have to have this back end thing that governs the team. Lift is to lift the capacity, to lift the constraint. We have the leadership of the quest, and then we have the infrastructure, which is kind of like the code that runs all of this. It's both the code, the comms, the software, but also the processes, the instructions, and things that kind of like, the projects. It's just like all the things that are needed to make your hands more productive. Then we have our finance. That's like your, not just the legal stuff, the finance and accounting stuff. It's like business and government accounting or a compliance. It's all the things you would think that a lawyer would do. So this is just making sure like, hey, can we allocate and do things? Can we spend money right? As well, I kind of put that in there too. And then training is the recruitment arm. Training is, can we bring in people into the system that can do this? So when a team is doing these quests, which it's not much, 90-minute meeting a week, maybe doing a quest mapping thing is something that I do all the time. It might take a few hours to map something out, but you do that once a quarter and you're done, right? And then you run this might be a few hours a week, like 2 hours a week. Like you're just per person, like a few hours a week, it just runs the business. And then a team can say and can see like, hey, there's some of these problems here. This right here is a problem, but this area is a problem. It's not a big problem, and this area is fine. The team can start their day and say, okay, well, this, actually in this example, it was actually this is the problem. But they can start and say, here's the how the company's working, here's the numbers, here's the things that we're tracking, and here's just like the highlighted things from what we're tracking all in one single view. It's like if we're playing a video game of running a business, I would hope to God I could design something like this or like use this in the game. But to build this out, it's really just using a whiteboard. And so we have templates in the workshop, in the community, and we first start by mapping out what are the areas, the model, and then we build this sort of adjustment thing out, which we do in our first onboarding call. And then we get people. If they don't have people who can handle these things for them, even on the back end, like, hey, can you have a project manager whose job is to run projects, or like a accountability person who can keep everyone accountable, to check in with them and make sure, like, hey, did you do your tasks, right? Can you have someone who's kind of like working on code or improving things or making, shipping stuff, improving processes and stuff? Just a more or less person who's in charge of improving the things, not just improving people, but improving others. Is someone getting in people who is profitable? And can you get someone who can kind of handle the finances stuff? So like doing bookkeeping and accounting to make sure that you're paying your taxes, because Lord knows you're definitely not. But at the end of the day, if all these things are on track and we reverse engineer the things that are stopping us from growing, we will grow. And if you like that, join the community, join the next workshop. If you haven't, we're going to be doing one real soon. And we have a bunch of these sort of operators in training that each have their own sort of specialty in the process. And some of the people we have are already natural managers that are already good at building processes. So even if you're a professional copywriter, content person, and you're looking for a role, learn the skills to manage. And these are skills that scale, because we have owners, founders that are looking for people who can kind of help them scale. And to do that, we have to build these systems to scale systems. Cool. Check out the link down below. I will talk with you then. Join us in the community. It's free in the public community there. Talk to you guys very soon. Cheers.